Ladies, gentlemen, and druids of all ages, with Season 6 hitting Diablo 4 along with the Vessel of Hated expansion in just a few days, and with this coming up, you may well be trying to work out exactly what to play on launch, whether it be the class or the build, and if Druid is on your list of consideration, today is for you, as we'll be going over our full Druid leveling build, which, while having a fair bit of similarities to previous seasons, has some new considerations this time around. First being the skill trees in general are of course different going into Season 6. They have been changed. There's a new active skill, there's a bunch of new passives, and past that we have more skill points to gain in general with the new leveling system too. Then also the main leveling method this season most people will go for is of course doing the expansion campaign as far as that takes us, and if it matches the base game quests they won't scale with difficulty tier XP boosts, which means that speed matters above all else for the first section of your journey through leveling this time around. That said, we're basing it all off of Lightning Storm, and before you even mention it, yes, this is a channeled skill, but once you channel it to the maximum size, it keeps that, so you can just sort of tap it as you move, as long as you do it once every few seconds, and it will keep your damage and the actual size of the lightning storm high without having to slow down your actual movement. This is our main AoE tool for clearing larger groups of enemies as we move, and then for single target we focus around Wind Shear, the basic skill, and the Calm Breeze aspect for that to just pile a load of poison damage on enemies over time. That said, let's break down the skill tree, the legendaries of note, the tempering that you would ideally grab, and anything else of relevance to the leveling portion of your journey up to level 60. First things first, your basic skill is of course Wind Shear. Then we grab Enhanced Wind Shear, which then unlocks core skills, and this lets us pick up Lightning Storm, as Wind Shear is quite weak until you have the actual legendary aspect for it. We take Lightning Storm's enhancement to make it keep its channeled size for a few seconds after you tap it, and then refresh it, and then we grab Fierce Wind Shear to increase movement speed when you hit enemies with this skill, and again, movement is a pretty big part of leveling speed when campaign completion is actually the main goal. Then we pick up Raging Lightning Strike for a bonus strike when you cast it. This unlocks defensive skills once we have this many points in, so we pick up Blood Howl for a shout skill that heals us on use, Enhanced Blood Howl to have it reduce its cooldown when you get kills, and then specifically for early levels you want Innate Blood Howl for the Spirit Generation on cast to help you manage resources, as this does refresh quite quickly in larger mob density content, which is also when you most want to use Lightning Storm itself. That said, later in leveling, if your gear gives you some leeway for Spirit Generation, you can swap to the other enhancement for an attack speed boost instead. After that, we pick up Debilitating Roar for a damage reduction to enemies on cooldown, but more importantly, its enhancements. The guaranteed one gives you Fortify when casting, and then we take Innate Debilitating Roar to increase your damage done while the skill is active. We take Cyclone Armor, its enhancement, and Preserving Cyclone Armor 2, and this gives us a bunch of passive damage reduction from elemental attacks, as well as some fluctuating damage reduction every few seconds just to all damage types at once. This also lets us knock back enemies, and we do have distant damage bonuses, so it does help for that too. The next step would then be to get 1 rank in Nature's Reach as a passive for some bonus damage to distant enemies, with extra bonuses packed in on other conditional situations too. Then round back and put 4 more points into Lightning Storm to max it out to its full 5 ranks for the damage increase this gives us for big pack clearing AoE. Then you want to put the full 3 ranks into the Backlash passive for bonus damage after casting a defensive skill, and between the 3 of these defensive skills that we have unlocked and on our bar, you can keep this active pretty consistently. At this point you have your ultimate skill node cluster unlocked as well, so we'll go and pick up Cataclysm, as well as its upgrades for a pretty large burst of damage while it's active, as well as another method of applying vulnerable to enemies pretty consistently too. Then we head back to the defensive tree and grab 3 ranks of Ancestral Fortitude as a passive for increased resistances, and 3 ranks of Vigilance for damage reduction after casting a defensive skill, which we again do often enough to keep this at pretty high uptime. Then moving on from this, we put 1 rank into Defiance for increased nature magic skill damage against elite enemies. This unlocks key passives at this stage, for which we are going to be picking up Perfect Storm. This gives us 40% increased damage and some spirit regeneration for storm skills that hit vulnerable, immobilized, or slowed enemies, and we have multiple sources of each of these to apply to them. We then take the other 2 ranks of Defiance to finish that passive off, then grab all 3 ranks of Circle of Life for some healing when we use our Lightning Storm against things, and then after that we go back to take 3 ranks of Charged Atmosphere over here to fire off a lightning bolt at a random enemy once every 8 seconds, 3 ranks of Electric Shock to give lightning damage a lucky hit chance to immobilize enemies, and increase damage against any immobilized enemies as well. We also grab 3 ranks of Bad Omen, so whenever you deal any damage to a vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned enemy, you have lucky hit chance to hit them with a lightning bolt, and then after that we take 3 ranks of Catastrophe for bonus damage for 8 seconds after we cast Cataclysm. The main purpose of this is just to give us more of an actual actual general damage burst window when we use our ultimate to help, especially for the purpose of bosses, as Cataclysm itself isn't great for bosses, it's much more for group clearing. Here we go back for the other two ranks of Nature's Reach as a passive for more distant damage and more bonus conditional damage as well. Then we go back to the core cluster and pick up Predatory Instinct, mostly just as a gateway to let us take 3 ranks of Digitigrade Gate for a bunch of bonus movement speed when in wolf form and for 3 seconds afterwards. This is entirely based around Blood Howl, but especially when walking through decently dense content, if you're killing things like this, it should be active quite frequently. Then we spend 3 ranks on Quick Shift as a passive for bonus damage after shapeshifting to a different form, again mostly centered around Blood Howl, but Debilitating Roar helps with this too. Then on live servers you will have a few more skill points than I do on this because it's a level 50 character on the PTR, which means it also doesn't have the Nahantu Renown points, so with those you actually want to fill out the Humanity passive for bonus damage in human form, because both of our main damage dealers will be done in human form. Then full ranks of Heightened Senses for both damage reduction or movement speed after changing to bear or wolf form, and doubling of both if you have recently been in both forms. This won't have massive uptime, but it will be active sometimes, and it's a nice bonus when it is. Then you want to take full ranks of Feral Aptitude for bonus damage while you are healthy, and bonus damage while above 100% movement speed as well. Then any remaining points just go into Resonance. We don't really have any earth skills, so this may as well just read as a low damage multiplier, but it is a damage multiplier nonetheless, so still worth picking up. That does it for your skill tree then, so next let's talk about the Spirit Boons. While leveling there is an unlock order, so we'll specifically go in priority order rather than, top to bottom. You want the Eagle Path first for swooping attacks. 15% attack speed is just extremely valuable early on in your leveling journey compared to most of the other stats that you would otherwise achieve while leveling. Then the Stag Path, actually with Advantageous Beast early on for 15% bonus movement speed and impairment reduction. The impairment reduction isn't a massive deal, but the permanent 15% movement speed ensures you will always have Feral Aptitude's movement-based bonus active, and again, movement speed is still just super effective for leveling quickly if we are purposely playing on lower difficulties and doing the campaign. Once you have finished the campaign, or if you are deciding to level through doing other things or on higher difficulties, you might instead on this path want the actual node that gives you damage reduction from elites. Then you want the Snake Path filled out with the Calm Before the Storm boon for Lucky Hit with nature magic skills to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate ability, followed by finally Wolf Path for Calamity to increase ultimate skill duration. At this point you want to unlock your bond and apply it to the Snake Path so you can have a second boon here, and then you want to pick up Overload for the occasional bonus lightning damage that gives you when you're already doing lightning damage. Moving on from that then we have our equipment, and generally the safe slots to upgrade are your jewelry, as most everything else you will be swapping constantly because of how big of a difference item power makes it and how quickly you will be finding your upgrades for equipment while leveling. So we'll only really focus on the 3 main slots here, which is the jewelry ones. The first is the Aspect of Calm Breeze, and this is added to the Codex of Power when you do the Grinning Labyrinth dungeon in the Dry Steppes, so you can force it to drop so that you will guarantee to have it, and you generally want this on your amulet as soon as you can really, as it increases the poison damage that is applied, and this is what makes your wind shear actually do solid damage. This is the main one that makes the whole thing function, especially for single target, and this is sort of the main thing that matters, and everything else is just sort of a cherry on top. And so the easiest ones to get that will up your damage are the Rapid Aspect, which is from the Buried Halls dungeon in the Dry Steppes, and this boosts your wind shear attack speed, and actually the Aspect of Vocalized Empowerment now, which is from the Sirocco Caverns dungeon in Kyrgyzstan, and this gives you resource gained per second while your shout skills are active. And it just so happens that we actually have 2 shout skills in this build, Debilitating Roar and Blood Howl. Blood Howl is one that actually also resets its own cooldown when you get kills, so you can keep this active pretty frequently. There are other things though that are forced to be RNG drops, but they're really worth keeping an eye out, and these are the Moonrise Aspect, which gives both basic skill damage and general attack speed, and also the Adaptability Aspect, which gives bonus resource when at low resource, and bonus damage when at high resource. As for Tempering, you don't want to overdo it while leveling, especially with resources being somewhat scarce while you're doing so generally I stick to weapon tempering only, and outside of a situation like last season where it was bugged to have like Lucky Hit to deal elements still at legendary quality from the start, the best option for this build is Chance for Wind Shear Projectile to cast twice. This is just a really strong sort of multiplier to our damage, especially for single target. Our group clear should be more than strong enough with Lightning Storm, so more single target is generally the goal at this stage, and this helps get you that. That said, while leveling, if you have spare materials, it also never hurts to use the resource tempering slots on rings and amulets to just get more raw resource generation. On Druid, just help out that curve a bit and let us use Lightning Storm a bit more liberally. Then finally for the setup itself, we have the first set of Paragon points that you unlock directly when you hit level 60, and this will help you burst through your tier 20 pit and directly into Torment 1. You can have a bit more than 25 points if you do your Nahantu Renown early, but I'm basically basing this off of the expectation of a player who hits level 60 with all of the base game renowned stuff completed and the Altars of Lilith as well, which would mean 25 points when you first ding to max level. The point spend here is quite simple then. For 25 points, all on the starting board, we go up the damage increase side on the right here, because the additive damage from the rare node means a lot more when we have low additive damage early on, like you will when you just hit max level. Then we take a sort of willpower based path up to the Paragon glyph, and inside of here we put the Earth and Sky glyph for the highest reliable damage multiplier that fits in this slot quite early, which is Earth and Sky, increasing all nature magic damage against crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies with the secondary bonus, and also increasing magic node potency within the radius with the main bonus. We use the rest of our first points here to just grab all of the rare and meaningful magic nodes in the radius too, and this gives us a bunch of general additive damage as well as damage to elites, with 2 of the magic nodes of each being boosted by this glyph choice as well. That just about does it then for how to put the build together, so let's just briefly go over how to actually play it, and it is quite a simple one. Calm Breeze is your main damage for single target fighting, otherwise only really use it to apply vulnerable or generate spirit. Lightning Storm is your main damage for groups, and you want to power this up by channeling it to the maximum size once and then just tapping at it just a little bit once every few seconds so that it does not lose its size and decrease. Aside from that, Cataclysm pretty much you just want to use on cooldown for a burst damage window, Blood Howl pretty much just on cooldown as well, Debilitating Roar on cooldown for damage or saved for survival if needed, and Cyclone Armor you really only want to press the active if things get a bit too close to you and you want them to be a bit further. That just about does it for today then everyone, your full Druid leveling build for Season 6 and how to put it all together. I wish you all the best of luck getting to level 60 as fast as possible, while still of course going at a reasonable enough pace to slow down and enjoy the story on your way through it. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and let me know how the build treats you come launch down in the comments below. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.